How did you first get involved in this movement?
Oh, that's a good question with a long answer because it began 16 years ago. I was an abortion activist. That's me, Jean Garton, speaking to one of the many hundreds of teenage and college students during the past 16 years. 16 years ago, I was pregnant and tried to get an abortion. It wasn't legal then. Today, my son, that unwanted pregnancy, sits in a classroom much like this. I changed my mind about abortion after researching the abortion slogans and found that they lied. The truth, though, was found in the question asked by that almost aborted son, who at age 3, seeing a picture of a child dismembered through abortion, sadly asked the question, who broke the baby? Now I ask you to examine those same slogans and answer that question for yourself.
Conditioning. America seems to be obsessed with conditioning. But it's not only our bodies that are being conditioned, it's our minds as well. Through advertising, for example, we have been conditioned to buy products which we are told can change our lives. We are conditioned to use a toothpaste that will give us sex appeal, to drive a certain car guaranteed to achieve status, or to experience popularity by drinking what the in crowd drinks. In advertising, and in many other areas of our lives, the technique of using image distortion and doublespeak is being employed effectively. For example, think about being in a tall building in an elevator going up. Watch the floor numbers as they pass by. 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. Wait! 12? 14? What happened to the 13th floor? Our conditioned response is, there isn't any. When we stop to think about it, we know that's just not possible. There is a 13th floor, but because it makes some people uncomfortable to call it that, because they don't want a 13th floor to exist, they call it something else, the 14th floor, in order to avoid the reality of its existence. This kind of deception is a harmless, humorous game we play, but it is neither harmless nor humorous when we apply that technique to human beings. The unborn child has become the 13th floor of the human family. Because it makes some people uncomfortable to acknowledge that a child exists, they simply call him something else, a blob, tissue, or product of conception, in order to avoid the reality of his existence. The slogans used to create such image distortions are what we are about to examine. The most popular slogan used to promote the concept of unrestricted abortion is "Every woman has the right to control her own body." As often as we've heard that, have we ever stopped to examine it logically? The dictionary defines woman as a female human being. Since over half the unborn children who are aborted are female, what right do these female human beings have to control their bodies? If feminism is to have any integrity, it must at least be consistent and grant equality to all females, regardless of size or age. No one, man, woman, or child, has an absolute right of control over his or her own body. Legally, you can't take your body into a public place if you are infected with certain contagious diseases. You can't drive a car if your body is filled with too much alcohol or too many drugs. Individual rights cease at the point where they infringe on the rights of others. The word control means to curb or restrain, And to be in control means to exercise authority over, to assume responsibility. Those who consent to sexual activity surely know that it carries an inherent risk of pregnancy, just as those who consent to driving a car know there is always the possibility of an accident, no matter how careful we are. Before we drive, we prepare ourselves by taking driver's education courses, and we seek to minimize the risks by buying insurance. But once we get behind the wheel of a car, we are responsible for whatever happens. The same is true with sexual involvement. Some people try to prepare themselves through sex education. Others hope to minimize the risks by using contraceptives. Nevertheless, we are responsible for the consequences of our actions. The time to exercise control over your body is before you expose it to the possibility of pregnancy. Abortion is promoted as a means of being in control of one's body, when actually it is evidence of a body that has been out of control. Her own body. Since this slogan promotes abortion, then obviously the body referred to is a pregnant body. But in pregnancy, there are two bodies, each with different heartbeats and different brainwave patterns.
Studies on human development have shown us clearly that while the baby's in the womb, she has periods of waking and periods of sleep. We know that she can even dream. She also feels pain, and she can cry. However, we don't hear the cry because there is no air in the lungs, and therefore there is no air going through the vocal cords to emit the sound. She's aware of light and noise. Her memory is operative, and she can make decisions about her own comfort. And we have seen babies suck their thumb in the uterus by ultrasound measures. So we think that she is just like any human being.
The unborn child is never a part of her mother's body and is so different from the mother's body that she would be rejected as foreign tissue if it were not for the placenta, which protects her and which the child herself produces. We read daily about test tube babies and embryo transplants. These have proven, beyond any doubt, that the unborn child is not a part of the mother's body. In these procedures, the child is conceived apart from the woman's body and later transferred to the womb. But even if we did not have biological and scientific evidence that the unborn child has a body separate from her mother, we could still determine this simply by using logic. All children, male and female, are carried in the body of a woman. One body cannot be both male and female at the same time, and unfortunately, some children die while still in their mother's womb. Obviously, one body cannot be dead and alive at the same time, so abortion, by any logical or biological standard, is clearly the destruction of a separate human body. The slogan, "Every child a wanted child," used to promote abortion. Sounds so loving, so compassionate, but it is neither, for it roots the value of one human being in the affections of another. Every child a wanted child fails to distinguish between an unwanted pregnancy and an unwanted child. Yet medical studies indicate that for the majority of women, in the early months, the condition of pregnancy is undesirable. Every child a wanted child fails to recognize that many children are wanted for the wrong reasons. Studies of battered children indicate that an overwhelming majority of those abused are the result of planned and wanted pregnancies. But they are children born to parents with emotional instabilities and unrealistic expectations. Every child, a wanted child, tells us nothing about the child. If I say you are attractive or attentive, I'm describing you. But if I say you are unwanted, I'm not describing you, but rather I'm saying something about myself. Wantedness measures our emotions and our feelings. And the 1973 Supreme Court decision, which allows for the elimination of unborn human beings simply because they are unwanted, tells us nothing about the millions of babies whose bodies have been broken and destroyed through legal abortion. What it does tell us is a great deal about ourselves and the kind of people that we have become. Perhaps the most unwanted child of all is the child conceived through forcible rape.
Out of 1.5 million abortions a year, perhaps 10 are for pregnancy due to rape. Abortion is just a Band-Aid cure for the trauma of a rape. A woman won't forget having been raped, and she won't forget having been pregnant. It seems to me a gross injustice to impose capital punishment on an innocent child for the crime of a rapist who so often goes unpunished.
By presenting abortion, we lead her to solve her problem in the same way a rapist solves his, by doing violence to the body of another human being who is an innocent victim. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there were no unwanted children of any age? No unwanted parents by children, no unwanted wives by husbands, no unwanted handicapped, mentally retarded, or minority people, no unwanted anybody. But the measure of our humanity is not that there are no unwanted ones among us. The measure of our humanity is what we do with those who are unwanted. Shall we care for them or kill them? A depersonalization process takes place in language and thought until gradually unborn children are reduced to problems. And of course, problems are meant to be eliminated. Words such as infant, toddler, adolescent, teenager, and adult leave little doubt as to what is being described. We immediately recognize these terms as referring to human beings in different stages of their development. So too, the words fetus and embryo are medical terms, which tell us where a human being is on life's spectrum. They were never meant to imply that the unborn children are somehow subhuman. There are differences, of course, in development and dependence. 10 weeks after conception, these tiny feet are already perfectly formed. Does being fully human depend on our size? If so, would we become more human if we gain weight and less human if we diet? Does being fully human depend on having all the bones of our bodies completely formed? That doesn't occur until we are in our teens, and our body isn't fully developed until we are in our mid-20s. At 7 weeks,